more from Senator Cornyn. This was in the second round of questioning that the Attorney General received. You know, in the first round, you heard Senator Cornyn bring up the operations in Texas. And by the way, I thought it was really interesting. You know, Senator Cornyn said, you know, we now know that there were cases in Texas where Carter's Country Gun Store, for instance, was told, go ahead and make these suspicious sales, very similar to what happened in Operation Fast and Furious. Holder completely just bystepped that inquiry. I didn't really even respond to it at all. Of course, you know, based on Holder's testimony, I think his answer would have been, yeah, I don't know anything about that any more than I know anything about the other stuff that I haven't known anything at all about all afternoon long. So I don't know that we were going to get any real answers from Eric Holder on that, but it was interesting that he didn't even try to address it. Now, in the second round of questioning, Senator Cornyn once again tries to get some straight answers from the Attorney General. Take a listen.
You agree that on February the 4th, the letter that was written to Senator Grassley that with the allegation that ATF sanctioned or otherwise knowingly allowed the sale of assault weapons to a straw purchaser who then transported them into Mexico is false. That letter, dated February the 4th, 2011, is itself false. We now know.
I'd say what I said is it contains inaccurate information.
Well, isn't that false?
Well, false, I don't want to quibble with you, but false, I think, implies people making a decision to deceive, and that was not what was going on there. People were in good faith giving what they thought was correct information to Senator Grassley. We now know that information was not correct.
Okay, if you won't agree with me, it was false, it's not true. You agree with that, right?
I'd say it's not accurate.
It's not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Did the person who wrote this letter on February the 4th, 2011, have they ever been disciplined or otherwise been held accountable for providing false information to a United States senator?
Well, as I indicated, the people who wrote the letter acted in good faith, thought that what they were sending was, in fact, accurate information. The people who were supplying the information thought that it was accurate. At some point, somebody in that chain did not give good information, and that's one of the things that the Inspector General, I hope, will be able to determine.
Did Lanny Brewer know better than what was represented in the February the 4th letter? Was he privy to either of these two memos, the July 5th, 2010? He said he was briefed April 2010. And by the way, what office does Lanny Brewer hold in the Department of Justice?
He's the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division.
And why would Lanny Brewer, knowing as he did back in April 2010 about Operation Fast and Furious, allow a letter that went out on the department stationery February the 4th, 2011, why would he let a letter that was false represent the position of the Department of Justice?
Well, first off, the briefing, the Blue and AAG Brewer brief, that was about wide receiver. That wasn't about Fast and Furious.
By the way, do you know the differences between wide receiver and Fast and Furious?
You mean, do I know that they're different operations?
Right. And so do you know the differences, the factual differences between wide receiver and Fast and Furious?
Well, I mean, there are a number of differences, both, I think, in scope, both in terms of time. The Bush administration was the one that started wide receiver. The Obama administration is where Fast and Furious began.
Are you winging this, or do you actually know?
I know this.
You know this? Do you know that wide receiver was done in conjunction with the government of Mexico, and the intention of the plan was to follow the weapons, and neither was there the intention to follow the weapons on Fast and Furious, nor did Mexico know that the United States government was allowing guns to walk into the hands of the cartels. Did you know that?
Senator, I have not tried to equate the two. I've not tried to equate wide receiver with Fast and Furious.
I'm just asking you if you know the differences between the two.
Sure, and as what I know about wide receiver, what you have said is in fact correct. There are memos that talk about gun walking that are related to wide receiver, but again, I'm not trying to equate the two.
Can we stop for a second? Senator Schumer? Senator Feinstein, would you like to respond at all? Associated Press, who's written several stories that have actually tried to conflate the two, would you like to respond at all? You know, in fact, I'm really curious why the Associated Press didn't run a story, considering all of the coverage that they've given Operation Wide Receiver, thanks to the anonymous distribution of information from Justice Department officials. Why they didn't have a story today with a big headline, Holder says differences between Wide Receiver and Fast and Furious. I'm kind of puzzled. Holder just admitted, talking to Senator Cornyn, yes, Mexico was involved in Wide Receiver. Yes, the scope was much smaller. Yes, apparently there was discussion about, bringing the Mexican government in on this, none of which happened in Fast and Furious. I'm not trying to equate the two, he said. Well, Mr. Attorney General, I have news for you. I don't know if you read the papers any more than you read your briefing papers, but there are individuals in the Justice Department speaking on the condition of anonymity that do want to conflate the two. In fact, I think it's fair to say that this administration has worked very hard to try to conflate Wide Receiver and Fast and Furious. But I'm glad that today the Attorney General actually said under testimony that there were clear differences, including the fact that the Mexican government was aware of Wide Receiver, was involved with Wide Receiver, completely unlike what occurred in Fast and Furious. All right, let's listen to a little bit more here of this exchange between Senator Cornyn and Attorney General Eric Holder.
When you got Senator Grassley's letter on January the 30th, 2011, why didn't you investigate?
I did. I asked people on my staff to look into the materials or the concerns that were raised in the letters. It was a January 27th letter, I believe, and a January 30th letter. I think there were two letters that he gave me on, I think maybe the 30th or 31st, something like that. And I asked people on my staff to look into that, and they did. And they started asking questions within the department about the material that was contained in the Senator Grassley letter.
And of course, that was just shortly after the letter that Senator Grassley gave you was shortly after the well-publicized murder of Brian Terry, the United States law enforcement agent.
Right. And to be clear, the letters were addressed to the acting head of ATF, Ken Melson, but he gave them to me.
Who works for you.
He gave them to me on January 31st.
Right. And so does I believe that you told Senator Whitehouse that you thought your staff made the right decision in not bringing Fast and Furious tactics to your attention. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
What I said was that there was no indication in the materials that they reviewed that contained anything about the tactics that were used in Fast and Furious, and as a result, there was no need for them to bring to my attention the reports. If, in fact, there was in those reports indications of gun walking or something like that, I think they should have brought that to my attention, but that was not contained in the reports. And that is what Assistant Attorney General Brewer said was the mistake that he made. When he heard about gun walking, he should have brought that to my attention or to the attention of the Deputy Attorney General.
Can you name me one person who's been held accountable for this Fast and Furious operation? Just one in the Department of Justice.
Well, we have made a number of changes with regard to personnel, both in the Phoenix U.S. Attorney's Office, also at the ATF headquarters here, and I will certainly await the report that comes out of the Inspector General, and I will assure you and the American people that people will be held accountable for any mistakes that were made in connection with Fast and Furious.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. And then again, shortly after Attorney General Holder's testimony concluded, the former U.S. Attorney for Arizona, Dennis Burke, admitted that he leaked a letter that in an attempt to disparage ATF field agent John Dodson, the first whistleblower who went public about Fast and Furious. Now, again, Dennis Burke is now in private practice. He got a pat on the back from the Attorney General when he resigned a couple of months ago. Holder didn't mention Fast and Furious at all. And now Burke says, yeah, I leaked this a letter relating to Agent Dodson. Agent Dodson's attorney, by the way, said, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, well, we really appreciate Dennis Burke, coming clean and owning up to this. However, Dennis Burke was not the only individual at the Department of Justice who was responsible for leaking this information. So if the administration and Dennis Burke, who again Used to work for Janet Napolitano when she was governor of Arizona, and is widely rumored to be a guy who wants to run for office in Arizona. If the administration thought that Burke could just take one for the team and that would be the end of it, far from it. Now, again, that news has been overshadowed by Holder's testimony today, but we're going to be talking about that more in the days to come.